You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Welcome to the exciting world of the movies.
What movie are we talking about today? That's right, we're talking about the Guyver. And I mean, we just can't roll in here with the same old talking about the Guyver. We got to bring in some experts. And that's why I'm so happy to have my friends from Kaiju Transmissions here with me, Matt and Byrd. Guys, welcome once again back to the show.
It's a pleasure to be back. I always like coming around here. Hopefully your regulars know who I am. I'm not on here as much as Trev, but I try to make time for you, Goat. Of course.
Of course, everybody knows. Remember you had your own Christmas special on the movie Graveyard a couple years back? Of course, everybody's
I've
going
not
to
heard this Byrd Christmas special. What did you guys talk about for that episode?
talk about Byrd's favorite holiday movies, I think. Some other stuff. It was a few years back, so I'm sure we probably talked about how terrible Star Wars was at the time. That's pretty much all we talked about back then when we went into a side chit-chat back then.
That was an era. Yeah.
It was. But yes, I mean, obviously I'm always happy to have the Kaiju Transmission boys, come join us. It's always a treat. I've been knowing these guys for years and years. And, they live a fascinating life that we can only dream about here in the graveyard. You know, we're stuck here with shovels in hands digging up all these old movies. But these guys actually kind of travel all around the country. They meet celebrities. They do all kinds of stuff. And they put their hands, into writing, contributing to books and whatnot, guesting around, hosting panels at conventions, all the thing. But these guys, they're a part of something even bigger than you ever could imagine now. Ain't that right, Byrd?
Oh, you bet.
Why don't you talk about it for a second?
For anyone that doesn't know, Matt and I are co-organizers of a virtual convention called Kaiju Masterclass, which is basically dedicated to getting people who make kaiju films or write about them to kind of give insight into how they're made and the people that worked on them. We did it last year as well. This year will be November 5th through 7th. You can keep up to date on Twitter. Just look for Kaiju Masterclass on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Matt, what's the other one?
KaijuMasterclass.com. We have all of our guests and different information. It's gonna be awesome. We have Kazuki Omori, who wrote and directed Godzilla vs. Biollante, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. We got Tom Kitagawa, who played Godzilla himself in some of the Millennium films and was King Ghidorah in Rebirth of Mothra 3.
And me and you did. We're gonna be talking with him.
Yeah, that's gonna be a blast. I always we've interviewed Tom for our podcast back in the day, but this is gonna be awesome because it'll be video and streamed live on our YouTube channel for Kaiju Masterclass. Then we have Rajiro Kuroku, who may or may not get some love in today's episode about the Guyver. So I'm excited about all these different guests we have.
Well, Kuroku did the music for Godzilla 84, and we're gonna have his very first English language interview. So yeah, it's something that we're happy to be a part of, and last year I think went really well. All the panels from last year are on YouTube. There's interviews with Shinji Higuchi, who directed Shin Godzilla, Bear McCreary, who did the music for King of the Monsters, Walking Dead, a whole bunch of other stuff. Shusuke Kaneko, who did the Gamera trilogy and GMK, which I know, Goat, that's one of your favorites.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an interview with him from last year on there. There's a whole bunch of stuff from last year, but yeah, November 5th through 7th, and the panels will go up on YouTube and live there forever. I know, Goat, you wanted to kind of get into a little bit more of that after
Yeah.
our main event here. But yeah, thank you for letting us do a little teaser for that.
Oh no, it's awesome. It's you guys are doing me a favor because it's this I think this first time. Well, actually, it's the second time ever. I did a Halloween special a few years back. Talked to a gentleman that had a really cool book come out called Satanic Panic. But other than that, you guys are really like the second people to ever come on to like actually promote anything, like major like that. So I appreciate you guys bringing your star power to the graveyard because like I said, we just sit around here digging up these corpses, and if there's anything going on in the world, especially when you're really kind of getting the inside stories of classic films from people who were there, part of them, making them, I think that's amazing. And I think, like you said, it's all going to be archived, and then for like literally years people will be finding this information. So I think it's a hell of a thing that you guys are doing, and I'm very happy about it. I'm very proud of you guys, and we'll talk more about it because I have a lot more questions about it.
Well, hey, when Matt and I started a podcast, we didn't think we'd be doing anything like this, or it just so happens that we're part of a niche fandom with like 5 people in it, so it just becomes easy to make connections, I guess. But I mean, and you know that, Goat, I've known you since before Kaiju Transmissions ever.
That's right.
Was anything, I've known you since we did. It's probably around the time me and Trev started, if it bleeds,
very
the first
early
year,
on. Yeah.
So. Which means I've known you for about a decade now.
Exactly. Amazing.
Which is, yeah, that's pretty wild, yeah.
Our roots run deep, and it's always good to, have you guys on. And we'll go ahead and get started. We have the Guyver here. I think we're all pretty much rolling off the same version here. We have the Arrow Video Blu-ray, which is kind of the director's cut. Not really, but it's pretty close to being the most uncut version of this film. We have
there's a version with a few more shots of gore and stuff, but I know that was I don't know if that ever went anywhere past VHS, but
right.
If anyone's out there with the VHS player, I don't know, we might be a few seconds off sync. I don't know.
Yeah, but we got the 95% complete version here, so. So anyway, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. When you guys hear me say the word go, please hit play on your remotes. We have it paused at exactly the 0-second mark because there is no opening logos, nothing on this. So we're starting right from the beginning. I think this is the first time we ever did this where we're at the 0-second mark and there's actually a real picture on screen. So you'll be seeing the outer space. So everybody...
this isn't normal.
No, it's very abnormal. So get your remote in hand. All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, go. And now we are like going, into this opening scroll. It's very reminiscent of Star Wars, I would say.
A lot of 90s movies did this.
But how many also had Mark Hamill?
Yeah. And basically what all this sets up is, I'm not going to read it to you guys, but basically it just sets up that previously, way back in history, aliens came. And they put it a special like kind of mutation gene into man that would when activated could transform them into monsters and whatnot.
Goat, did you have any kind of order you wanted to bring up stuff on here? I know Matt has a crap ton of history about the Guyver franchise, but I think
pretty much like just kind of unfurl it, guys. We don't have to go scene by scene because not everybody's gonna be following.
I think it would be. I think we should start by saying like when we all maybe saw this movie,
right?
Which for me was when I was young. I don't know. I was probably 4th grade, maybe 5th grade. I don't know. It was maybe a couple years after it came out, but it was on the Sci-Fi Channel all the time. So I watched this and the sequel on the Sci-Fi Channel back when they, played a lot of like stuff that I don't know what they play anymore. I don't know. There's like reality shows and
I know it's sci-fi so downhill. Yeah, but for me, I actually knew about this film before it was released because it got the big kind of multiple issue run up in Fangoria, really going behind the scenes with Screaming Mad George, and Obviously, we'll get to it in a little bit, but Steve Wang worked on this film as well. But at that time, Fangoria was all about covering. I'm sure they probably knew him personally, had access to him, but Fangoria was like really trying to push Screaming Mad George as kind of the next, like the Tom Savini heir apparent, I would say. So I knew about this, and then I don't know exactly when it hit video, but within probably a month or two that it hit video, I found it at a store and rented it, and that was the first and only time I actually ever seen this film. I enjoyed it quite a bit back then, but I was probably only about 12 or 13 years old at the time, and when you guys brought up the idea to do this episode, I was like I'm all about it, because I remember this movie fondly, not so much from actually viewing the movie, but just rereading over the years those Fangoria articles and the effects and everything.
For me it was, we did a Guyver episode for Kaiju Transmissions a few years ago where we talked about the two movies, but up until then I probably hadn't seen this movie since I was a kid, but it was one of those where it's like, oh, I remember all of this because it was on all the time. I gotta say it freaked me out. We'll talk a little bit about the odd body horror gore fest / children's film that this is. I'm sure, because there's two extremes at play here, but it was one of those where, like, I don't know if you guys as kids, like, you ever watch a movie or something on TV and like you're totally digging it, and like it doesn't scare you until like it's time to go to bed. Like you start thinking about it. This was definitely one of those. One scene in particular is still one of the most upsetting things I've seen in a movie, and we'll talk about that too. But
I saw this. This was a Blockbuster rental, and I remember seeing this about the same time and renting it that I picked up Zerum, actually, which is another Japanese science fiction, based property anyway, and it stuck with me a ton. And then of course, Sci-Fi was running the sequel, Guyver 2: Dark Hero, which I remember specifically seeing for the first time on a family vacation in a little hotel room. Like, 5 of us crammed it in 2 different beds, and it was playing on the TV. And somehow my parents like let us watch it. I think I was 10, maybe, sounds right. But this has been the Guyver property is pretty well known in the U.S., but also like there's so much limited information about it, and we'll talk about why that is. But it's something that, like, ADV Films, huge production company, especially in anime, released a bunch of different stuff. Actually helped produce one of the anime properties, and there's a bunch of different like merchandise you can get. It seems to be pretty popular overall, but also is a property that, like, it's based on an ongoing manga that's still technically like in production, even though it hasn't had a release in several years. And they release it like,
well, in Japan it's still going, right?
Yeah, so like the last release was in 2016, but like it ends in a place where people were expecting it to continue, and there's been like radio silence from the creator, which is Yoshiki Takaya. Sorry, I can't pronounce that name correctly, but it's still technically in production. And he was producing a couple volumes every year for a little bit, and then it kind of slowed down to like once a year or once every other year, so very sporadic. And then since 2016, we've had radio silence, to the point where like people online are saying they think it may or may not be dead, but there's not been anything from the creator himself about like what comes next. But yeah, it's really interesting because like you get a ton of different merchandise that come out of this. It got actually picked up by Viz Media at some point, and that's been out of print for over a decade. There was another U.S. release by Chang Yi, which is another production or another manga release company for the United States. But like, it's been released off and on in the United States, and now if you want to go pick up the original manga, which started in the mid '80s, most of those are going to be available through Scanlation, which is basically these fans come together, they translate it, they release it. But one of the weird things about that is, to get it, you actually have to show them that you purchased the Japanese version. Like, they want you to say, hey, I'm supporting the original release. But some of that stuff's been so out of print for so long that, like, you're buying it secondhand anyway. So, like, you're not actually giving money to the original creators. You're giving money to, like, eBay people. So it seems like it's a self-defeating thing. But, like, there's very little English language information available for this, despite having, 36-year history.
That's really shocking to me because, I mean, you know, like me being an American, obviously, like I found out about this movie, you know, or this property, you know, through the movie being produced. But it's like I always knew that it was a big thing, and I just always thought it was like this ongoing thing. Like I thought it was like almost like possibly like a Japanese like kind of version of Spider-Man type thing. But like it's very weird to me that like even the older, like I get the creator kind of slowing down, you know, like we see that happen with creators in terms of producing new content. But it's very shocking to me that at least there's not a company in Japan or wherever just kind of, you know, on a periodic basis releasing reprints. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like they would sell and make a lot of money doing that.
Yeah, you get a lot of Guyver merchandise. I mean, I think there's like a figure arts figure. There's like I think a Prime One figure. There's some really high end merchandise that comes out of this property. But like yeah, so Yoshika Takaya actually started doing manga under a different pen name, which is Moriru Chimi. But he actually started a hentai, of course, because you know that's just a thing that kind of happens. The interesting thing about his first,
Wait. I think we
yeah,
just got to explain briefly what hentai is because I didn't know for a long
I
time.
mean it's basically porn in cartoon form in comics. That's what it is. I don't know. Like the whole joke about hentai is often involving like tentacles, but yeah. So he gets his start under a different pen name, and he gets actually there's a basically a magazine called Lemon People. Now I have no idea what what that's all about, but he actually he works and he puts out this manga property called Gekusatsu Uchiken, which is serialized. It gets multiple different prints. A funny Godzilla connection here is that there is a Godzilla suit actor, Hurricane Ryu, who went on to play the King Ghidorah, Batra, Baby Godzilla, Godzilla Jr. He also was published in the same anthology in Lemon People. He had his own hentai property that he was actually drawing at the time. So there is a Godzilla connection there. But the original thing that Yoshiki actually works on is called Hades Project Zero Mirror, and doesn't I mean that doesn't last a whole long time. He basically starts publishing Guyver in 1985, and then it gets picked up by various different publishers because in the manga industry in Japan, you have publishers that kind of come and go. But for 20 years, it was published by Shonen Captain, and then it ended up getting published by Kadokawa Shoten, which is important later on because Kadokawa is actually involved in one of the anime productions with ADV. And it's been around since 1986, and again, it was actively being published at least once a year or once every other year, going up to 2016. And it was picked up by Viz Media at one point, which Viz Media does a lot of the U.S. manga releases. I mean, I think Viz does Dragon Ball, as far as I recall. And it's also a property that, like, it's got some other Godzilla connections that I want to bring up real quick, like the Mega Smasher, which is something that the Guyver uses as, like, the main finishing attack.
That's the thing that comes out of his chest?
Yeah, it's basically inspired by
We're going to see that later.
Yeah, yes. Beam and stuff. And then there's, like... there's some really interesting ideas behind how the Guyver comes together from the creative process. Like when we actually get to see him, I'm gonna bring something up there. But yeah, I mean, it's such a weird thing where like here's a manga property that gets published once a year, once every other year, and gets picked up by at one point ADV Films, gets an anime release production by ADV Films, and there's just not a lot of information out there about it, despite having a lot of products like toys and things available, which is kind of a really weird thing that I don't recall like another comparison in from a Japanese media standpoint getting a US release and then kind of like nothing else happens with it.
Right. It's like usually that's around the time they kind of crank it up a notch. I just want to jump back because you guys are the kaiju experts. We got some in the cold open. We had the scientist who he's got the super weapon that, you know, he's trying to get away from the monsters and hide from them. he stashed it, but they tracked him down, and then he actually himself was able to transform into a monster. And I just wanted you guys critique his appearance. He was like almost like a gill man, like a creature of the Black Lagoon. I thought it was like really awesome. Like I kind of wish they would have saved that design for later, for possibly a different character, because I thought that was like a really really good costume or suit that they did there.
Hey, I love fish monsters, so I'm you won't get any argument from me.
Yeah, I think one thing this film does really well is the suits and the different monsters that you get to see. I feel like the design is not only faithful to the manga and the stuff in the anime that comes later, but like it works really well in this movie. All the effects, I just they hit that spot where like they're kind of silly at times, but often like they're also terrifying. Kind of that weird thing Bird was talking about, where like, hey, here's a kids movie, but also there's going to be blood and goop, and like there's a transformation scene that happens later on that is absolutely terrifying. But I think the effects work in this film and the suits are just really well done.
Well, it's Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang. You can't get much better than that.
You're the best. So.
we talked through the opening credits, but that theme song has been in my head like all week, knowing that we were gonna do this.
It's a banger. Yeah,
we should talk about this cast, because this cast is absolutely crazy.
And keep in mind, this film was technically low budget. It was a $3 million budget.
$3 million. The sequel was only 900,000.
Right.
Talk about a step down. But yeah, this cast is insane. Right now we're seeing David Gale in all of his evil John Kerry glory, and Michael Berryman. A moment ago we saw the introduction of Mark Hamill's character. Jimmy J.J. Walker from Good Time.
He's the one who blew me away the first time I seen him. I was like, damn, I can't believe he's doing this type of movie, because like as a kid in the 80s, there was plentiful reruns of Good Times, Dynamite and all that. And I was just like, man, like, in my mind, I didn't realize he was just like a stand-up comic guy who probably was just doing comedy clubs for the most part, maybe sporadic TV appearances. I was like, wow, like, how'd they get him in this movie? You know what I mean?
What was the pitch to get him involved in this? Like, hey, you're going to rap later a few times. Is that all it took? Or was it like, I mean, the cast in this is pretty incredible for especially the kind of production that it is.
And it's really weird too, because I remember even as a kid thinking he was too old to be playing the part that he was playing. Like he plays a guy with like he pretty much dresses like a rapper of the time, and he even, like you say, he talks in some raps and stuff. But I did the math the other day. I think he was like only like 42, 43, but it just like he just seemed like such a, I don't know, such an adult guy to be doing like silly raps and stuff. But I mean, it works. I love his presence in the movie. And there's like a certain point where you think he's going to get killed off or kind of be written out, and like, no, he stays in the movie like forever.
We have Michael Berryman hitting himself and like scratching his own face is pretty.
So this concept, the Zoolord, which is David Gale, his character, the Zoolord idea is basically they can make the Zoenoid, the monsters, they can control them against their will. So whatever he wants them to do, they have to do, which is a concept straight out of the manga. So that's actually something, it doesn't play out this way in the manga, of course, but like it is something that is based on the source material.
So it's like pretty much if they don't do his evil bidding, he'll pretty much make them kill themselves, I'd say.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
I think this is one of David Gale's last roles too, before he died.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little for a second about the directors. It's a very unusual move. It makes sense because you needed special effects guys. I'm sure they kind of probably Steve Wang and Screaming Mad George, and they probably got more than their money's worth. I think the most brilliant thing the studio did was getting them to do it, because they did a lot of effects work way under budget of what they were normally charged, just because they were directing. But pretty amazing that two makeup effects artists would be making their they co-direct the film together, but making their directorial debuts. I thought that was really interesting.
I can talk a little bit more about just how that came to be. First, I want to mention that this guy playing Sean, who becomes the Guyver, Jack Armstrong, he's awful in this.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it because the cast is actually pretty dang strong for a low budget, and I'm just kind of like, how did they settle on this guy as the
Yeah,
lead?
and Vivian Wu playing Misky, the love interest, she's not all that great either. I know she was a big actress in Hong Kong, and she probably gave this some international star power, but she's not. I mean, another thing about that though is like they're surrounded by like these pro character actors. I mean, you have Mark Hamill, David Gale, Jeffrey Combs, Michael Berryman, all these veterans around you, and they're just running circles around them.
Yeah, I gotta say one thing that's like a little frustrating is it's really enjoyable seeing Mark Hamill in this film, but I mean he's still like a really young guy at this point. You know, this is only probably about 7 years after Return of the Jedi came out, and like I just kept when I was watching it the other day, I just kept thinking like, dang, I wish Mark Hamill was the Guyver.
Do you remember the VHS cover that was like it was a split image of the Guyver mask, and then it had Mark Hamill. The other half was Mark Hamill's face.
Yeah,
and it said Mark Hamill in the Guyver, like they're trying to make it like he's the he's the Guyver.
I was gonna say they're trying to sell you on the fact that he was the Guyver, which is brilliant from like a marketing standpoint, and pretty disappointing when you see the movie.
Yeah.
Now what's up with his that shirt that he's wearing? Got like a weird. Pouch in the.
It's like a maroon, like loose turtleneck, like flip down turtleneck, weird thing. I don't know.
What's that thing in the middle? What is that?
Pocket?
It's like a weird. Yeah.
It's very like early '90s fashion, I'd say.
Precursor to the fanny pack.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah. So.
One thing though about the lead here, just real quick, there's like an old couch and some old newspaper magazines. Or I mean, dispenser machines, and he's like using them to stand on to look down to the river. When I first watched this, because he kind of rides his bike up to like this little bum flop house, I thought this is where he lived, like on the river right here.
That would be great. Yeah, just a quick plug. Matt and I actually got the opportunity to interview Steve Wang for the Kaiju Transmissions podcast, and to this day, it's still maybe the best interview we've ever done. At least one of them.
It's really good. I listened to it maybe about 3 months ago, and then I listened to most of it again today. It's a really good interview.
Yeah, he really wasn't. He really didn't mince words. You'll get to hear me at least 3 times try to convince him that this is a good movie.
Yeah. but he was very fan friendly though, and he said like, you know, making this movie was a tough experience for him, but he enjoys hearing that people found enjoyment. You know, he's not like you know, he's him himself, you know, what the movie didn't turn out the way he wanted to because of studio problems or whatever, but he's grateful for the fans to get some enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like him and the cast got along great. It was just a lot of kind of studio interference, which I guess we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, so this was something that he and Screaming Mad George were like best friends. You know, they're still really close, and they're also Guyver fans. And I guess someone in Japan had approached Screaming Mad George and said, you know, what do you think about doing a Guyver movie? And he said he wanted to do it in America. And then he took it to Brian Yuzna, who produced a lot of really great films for Stuart Gordon, like From Beyond and Reanimator. He directed both Reanimator sequels, Society. He's directed a handful of great movies himself. And Yuzna agreed to it, and I know they got some involvement from Shochiku, the Japanese studio, and George wanted to direct it at the time, and he was like, you know, I want to bring my friend Steve Wang to make it with me, and we'll also do all the effects, and that's what happened. This is a weird one where, you know, I mean, there's lots of movies that have more than one director. You know, you think of the Coen brothers, or, you know, any amount of them, but they broke this up where they would both direct their own scenes as opposed to both directors being on the set together. So,
Right.
and there would be some days where Wang would be running, like, overseeing second unit. There would be days where George is overlooking second unit. So that's a pretty unconventional way to make a movie.
I think it kind of helped this movie though because of the low budget. I'm sure the quick shooting schedule that they could, because usually, like you said, you just have first unit shooting and then second unit just doing little inserts and pickups. They were basically shooting 2 first units, like at the same time.
Yeah. The problems came in with Brian Yuzna, just really being, I guess you could say, being a little too hands-on. Um, right before they started shooting, Brian, it doesn't seem known if it was investors that Yuzna was answering to, if it was him, but Yuzna basically called everyone in and said, we need to rehaul this whole movie to be a kids film and more like Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, like I can't see Brian Yuzna that being his idea, because if you look at his work is very grimy and adult oriented.
Yeah. But that kind of became his mission, is like, George and Steve had a very, they wanted to make a movie that was very true to the Guyver property, as fans, and they wanted it to be much darker, and lean into more of that, and not all this comedy and all this goofy stuff and rapping monsters. That's all stuff that they really didn't want to do. But Brian was the one that was kind of breathing down their necks and trying to tell them, like, hey, for kids. And Steve even admitted to us, he was like, it's at one point when he was like, at one point when he was doing the scenes, he would intentionally just try to make them like more gory and fucked up, just as like a retaliation.
Yeah, like what are you going to do with this? How are you going to make this kid friendly? I think this scene right here that's happening right now, where the main guy, he's got the bio weapon or the armor, but he hasn't activated
he's being
it.
picked on by these guys that look like rejects from the band Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah, they're like a street gang. I think this part is what because I didn't know all the behind the scenes, like, changing of the movie and all that, but like I think
you feel it a lot here.
Yeah, this part reminds me the most of the first Ninja Turtles movie.
There's like wacky sound effects and stuff like that.
And just the performances are really kind of like, they're not bad. Like, it's not like everybody was trying to give a good performance and came out bad. It's like intentionally over the top, I'd say, from the gang members.
Well, right before this, when they were dancing to the rap song, the big white dude is how, like, I would be dancing at the club, which is why I don't ever go to the club. And those two remind me of like Bulk and Skull from Power Rangers. Right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't looked at as like, like last second they were like, oh, we got to make this like for kids, like Ninja Turtles. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't the first idea, just because it's like you have a kind of like outrageous wacky hero, and then you have basically fighting him a bunch of mutated monsters, much like the Ninja Turtles were, especially the Ninja Turtles cartoon, Yeah. So I'm kind of surprised that wasn't from the get-go.
Oh, I should mention to people who might not know who Steve Wang and Screaming Mad George are. Well, kind of what you were saying about like them being hyped up in Fangoria a lot. Like in the 90s, they were up there with, guys like Rick Baker is like your, go-to makeup and monster guys. They Predator was the movie that they worked on. That kind of was like a big breakout for both of them. And then Screaming Mad George did a lot of stuff with Nightmare on Elm Street, and also a lot of Brian Yuzna's stuff. That was another thing that Steve Wang was telling us. He was like, when Brian was mad and needed to yell at someone, like, he was friends with George. So, I was kind of the whipping boy.
Took it out on Steve, which is a shame, because like if like I just think, you know, Brian Yuzna producing and Screaming Mad George, Steve Wang directing projects. I feel like that would be like a dream kind of lineup. Unfortunately, it was, you know, in this bad
There's an
situation.
interesting story about the editing that I can reiterate when we get to that sequence. But
let's talk a little bit real quick, because this is the first transformation into the Guyver. What the Guyver exactly is, like the disc. It's kind of like what did you guys say? It almost looks like a board game or something from like the 80s, like, you know, like Simon,
like one of those
and
like
all that.
Simon Says,
yeah,
like where it really does.
yeah. So the guy hits his head. It comes alive. It starts enveloping him, like, you know, it's like a biomechanical thing, and like the little disc thing kind of becomes the face part, and the rest is just all kind of almost like Venom-esque tentacles, you know, go around the guy and kind of create this suit. But I mean, I think this suit is something you could use in a movie today, a modern film production.
This is a great suit. And I like how the transformations are cut. They're cut in a very Japanese way. If you've seen like a Kamen Rider, or a Super Sentai or something, you know, where they do these quick close-ups of, you know, the elbows and the arms and stuff like that. The Guyver is a biological suit of armor, and I guess you tamper with this disc board game looking thing, and it implants itself into the back of your neck, and then it comes out of your body when you need to transform.
Right. Like it's almost like a I don't know how to describe it. I mean, like it could be like a RoboCop-esque suit, but it's much more thin and agile, and like in between the kind of bluish grayish armor plates in between, then like you can see like almost like the shell or skin of, like, you know, like it looks totally alien unto itself, although it's you know.
It's it's an interesting kind of you can really see like the kind of Japanese superhero, how it is kind of taking from stuff like, you know, the Sentai outfits and the Kamen Riders and the it's like if David Cronenberg like did one of those shows. It has the big kind of Spider-Man looking eyes.
Yeah, like I guess it's kind of somewhat similar to kind of like the Spawn suit of the 90s film as well. But this was like years earlier and a much lower budget film, and this suit actually looks better, I would say, than the Spawn suit.
Yeah, it was the creator himself said like it was basically based on Sinjanor. Probably saying that incorrectly. There's a 1980s movie which I'm blanking on the title bit right now, but that there's a monster.
Like it's been called different things. When I rented it, it was actually, I'm pretty sure the copy I rented actually was called Sinjanor.
There's actually like a sequel to it apparently that was released later on.
Okay, maybe it was a sequel I saw.
Yeah, so it first appears in like a movie in the 80s, and like essentially that movie was based on, of course, Alien, which is the, you know, so you can kind of see like Alien, Sinjanor, Guyver. If you see the monsters kind of side by side, you can see the influence and textures and stuff.
And it was actually so popular, Matt, that I remember a lot of Fangoria issues I had in the 80s. You know, in the back they would have ads where you could mail order masks, and they actually made a mask of Sinjanor.
That's impressive, actually, especially because if I can't imagine that movie's good, but maybe maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it was really you know, but I want to say, if I'm remembering right, I think it's William Malone who went on to have like a career, or like he was involved in it somehow, so it kind of like comes up through him, and you see him talking about it every now and then. But like, yeah, it's another movie where it's like the movie itself is not impressive, but the suit and the creature is.
Yeah, my Google Foo tells me it was called Scared to Death, 1980. So.
Right. It was early, which it's like how quick did they knock off Alien when Alien came out in like 79? You know what I mean? Like, did they get back from the theater and start that day and start designing the suit, or what?
This is the first movie I can think of where I've seen a close up of Michael Berryman's hands.
Yeah.
I only say that because it's he has I forget the name of it, but he has a condition where he doesn't have fingernails or hair anywhere.
Although this is especially the Blu-ray copy, he does have a little tiny bit of hair on his head. You can see it when he's
Oh yeah, I
backlit.
see it right. Little whiskers right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
little kind of wispy hairs.
It's like a single hair.
I always thought Michael Berryman was great. Obviously, he kind of, his breakout role was in Hills Have Eyes. I don't know. I just always liked him. I liked his appearance and his brief appearance in Weird Science and some other things. And he was in some music videos in the 80s, some famous music videos. I just always enjoyed the guy.
I love that David Gale, he gets this. They switched the Guyver suitcase with the suitcase with a toaster in it, and I love that he's actually using the toaster.
Yeah, he didn't just throw it away.
Like, I got a free toaster. I might as well try to make some toast or something.
But then he got mad though because it burned his toast. So. No, obviously it was very hard making these films. Jackie Chan poster there, I noticed that. It was very hard making these films. Do you guys see this, especially now when everything is about IPs and properties? Do you see us getting any chance of like a modern kind of big budget remake of this?
I think there should be. There's definitely a fandom for this franchise, and I know Steve Wang had been trying to do a third Guyver movie for a long time. He even had some Japanese investors and stuff, and he just said he could not get any movement on it. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably need some kind of import that gets popular. Like, they'd have to do a new anime in Japan that like Netflix picked up and got huge or something.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what it would take.
Like a fresh injection of interest in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely got passionate fans. I mean, if you got people that are actively doing translating work, making it available, but only if you support the original purchase of like the actual Japanese manga, that tells you like there's some crazy super fans. It's got enough merchandise too that like there's an audience for it. But I also think Bird's right. It'd have to be one of those things where you strike while the iron's hot and on the heels of something else.
Right.
Yeah, like right now, there's all like anime and manga is having another, like, it seems like every 20 years or so there's a huge renaissance in it. Yeah. So like now would be a good time, get one of these really popular anime studios, or someone that does something really popular like Demon Hunter, or is it Demon Slayer?
Demon Slayer,
yeah, that's like such a popular anime. Get like if one of those guys made a Guyver thing and it went to Netflix, I think
Netflix is picking up anime stuff. Like they've done the live action Bleach and
God, I know.
I mean, like there's a bunch of that kind of. And the last anime that was Guyver related came out and it finished up in 2006. So it's been 15 years.
I talk to people that are either fans of the movies or the manga or the anime. Like I talk to people all the time that know the Guyver. And
yeah, I was wondering because it's like the film production, the studios, they really let's say the last 10 years they got really focused on trying to make films that would capture a good box office in China. And I was wondering if maybe that had like something to do with it, because not a lot of, like, nothing that I know of Japanese culture. Like Japanese culture, very selectively, but over the decades has penetrated American pop culture quite a bit. But I mean, it seems like Japan and China don't really get along so well. So like,
no.
Yeah. So
like, it's anime and video games is where it is the most here, and then like Legendary, we had the Godzilla stuff, but I mean those weren't really making Avengers money or anything, and
which is very very sad, because I really do believe that the Godzilla films were of equal quality of any of the mega franchises of the last 10 years,
Yeah, and then like the whole J-horror boom has like dried up here. I mean, Japan's always going to make horror movies, but for a while it seemed like any Japanese horror movie that existed would get like an American remake and a then those would get a bunch of sequels and stuff.
Well,
like
it really
that.
seemed like too that like American studios like copying and remaking the J horror trend was kind of American studios' way of getting into the PG-13 horror genre. Remember that? Like,
yeah, because a lot of those Japanese films were very like they were very minimalist. You know.
I have to get a shout out though to the main actor. I give him props. He's wearing a T-shirt of the band The Cult, Sonic Temple, one of my favorite albums of all time. So at least that was kind of cool to see. Yeah, and like you guys were talking about the lead actress here, I thought her performance was very, not really that great in the beginning of the movie, but the second half of the movie, she really kind of won me over, and I actually enjoyed her character as the movie went along. Now, this guy, the guy, I don't know the character's name, but this kind of big brute guy that's working with the bad guys here with the mustache, I want to say he played like in a flashback or something. I want to say he played like an abusive father in one of the Freddy Krueger films. Of like one of the characters had like a dream sequence or a flashback.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And this is a very strange non sequitur. This scene with Michael Berryman and Spice Williams Crosby talking about shopping.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I feel like they let Michael Berryman play a very like when I saw Michael Berryman was in the movie again, rewatching, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what he's going to be like, because he kind of plays the leader of the bad guys, the goons or whatever. And he actually really surprised me because they gave his character a lot more humor and warmth than you would expect from Michael Berryman, because he's usually just playing cold-blooded killers in films.
Yeah, he does more in this than he usually does. You're right. Freddy's dead. This guy was Tracy's father.
That's what I thought, yeah. I knew it was either part 5 or 6, but I couldn't remember exactly.
Nobody remembers Freddy's dead, man. That's
yeah. Here we have an innocent lady was killed by the bad guys. So like, even though they play it very comical with the group of bad guys, like they will murder people, innocent people.
I guess that guy, the bigger guy, I guess he does a lot of anime voiceover work these days.
Wow,
so he's done stuff on Ghost in the Shell, Digimon, The Big O. He's kind of Transformers. Yeah, he's kind of does a lot of voice stuff, I guess.
I thought this was really funny and convenient that they had the guy here. He's not transformed into the Guyver yet. He's just himself. He's trying to rescue the female lead who's being in the act of being kidnapped, and then like Mark Hamill just happens to pull up at the same time.
This is also actually kind of a little bit against type for Mark Hamill.
Yeah,
he's it's not often he's a more like gruff kind of like detective type character.
Yeah, he's like a somewhat rogue. He's always disobeying his officers that are above him, and he's always chain smoking. Like, it was very obvious to me that they were trying to cast him in a light that was different than what he had been known for as Luke Skywalker. I really like Mark Hamill though when he pops up in other things. It's a small role, but I enjoyed him also in John Carpenter's Village of the Damned. He played the priest, and I also liked him. He was in Body Bags. Played a pro baseball player.
That's a Toby Hooper segment.
Yeah, and I believe he gets, if I remember right, he gets his eye transplanted.
Yeah,
this part's awesome, by the way. The whole like monster shtick. I mean, I know it's dumb and played for laughs, but like it is pretty funny.
Yeah.
What's up with it? Why is that was very weird how it like slow mode Jimmy Walker when he started to run.
I think it's just because they had that in between shot of like the transforming monster head. I think if they just would have like just shown it regular speed, you wouldn't really have noticed it was an in between head.
And here we have Scream Queen Linnea Quigley.
Yeah,
doing what she does best.
Like you said, Matt, playing the shtick is very funny. It's like literally this monster jumps over this wall because he's chasing, our heroes or whatever. But he actually jumps straight into the production of a horror film. and which supposedly was going to have a monster in it, and like the director, everybody, like they don't even know what the monster in their own movie looks like. They think they think this monster that just jumped over a wall is like the guy they're supposed to be filming. It's very strange.
When you see the actual monster suit from like the one from the movie, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like this.
It doesn't really look. It doesn't even really look like.
It looks like a grape costume or
like
something. Yeah. But the Jimmy Walker monster is one of the best ones. I thought this one was kind of like a cross between a dragon and a gremlin.
The guy playing the director is actually a guy that was a special effects guy for Full Moon, named Michael Dieck. But he acts and does effects in a lot of stuff for Full Moon. He also directed Zarkor the Invader, which was a Full Moon's version of a kaiju movie.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't very good.
Oh yeah, there's the monster costume.
Like the monster. Yeah,
it's like a big fish. I thought it was like a grape costume, but yeah, it's like a big fish.
I will say, I think like the one thing both Guyver films do really well is getting monsters that are pretty close to what you get in the source material. Because they could have just like done something completely different, and they actually pull monsters like directly, off the page, out of the anime, into the movie. And that's something like for me as a fan who actually enjoys the original stuff, like that I do appreciate that.
I do, just with so many monsters that are in this though, just like to do the sculpting to get the molds to make the suits. I would think these people were working like for 6 months, day and night, in all honesty, because there's some full body suits in this film that you see on screen. Would have took weeks and weeks to make, that you see on screen for like literally a minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially later on. I do think too, as we're kind of talking about this, might be a good time to just talk about some of the original stuff. Like Guyver was kind of formulated as a Kamen Rider riff, and Kamen Rider is a popular 1970s Japanese superhero show that's like still going today. There's a million Kamen Rider shows and properties, but basically there was an interview with Yoshiki Takaya, who's again, he's the creator of the Guyver, and they were like, hey, make us a manga, but make it like Kamen Rider. And that's kind of how he was like, well, I guess I'm going to go do this thing. And then he came up with the actual character for the Guyver based on kind of the Kamen Rider model, which is like you have a transforming hero. But of course, the manga actually got a couple different OVAs, which are the original video animations in Japan. So like the first one comes in 1986, which is called Guyver Out of Control. It's directed by Hiroshi Watanabe, but he actually did key animation for like Fist of the North Star, several of the Slayers movie entries. Those are both very popular anime titles. And then that was actually picked up and got a release by Dark Image Entertainment label, which would go on to release like Devilman, which is probably the thing that maybe your audience scope might know the most of, but also would release like Gunbuster, which is hugely popular in 1990, and then kind of a weird tokusatsu title called Ambassador Magma, which I actually haven't seen, but it's something that a lot of Godzilla fans might recognize. And basically that OVA, it takes the first 4 volumes of the original Guyver manga, and it bases its story on that. It's okay if you've seen it. It's actually known. People probably know it notoriously because there's like a sequence where there's actually a female Guyver who transforms, and there's sort of like a tentacle rape sequence with it. Like when the armor goes and attaches her body, it like basically goes up inside her. It's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was wondering about that when I was reading about the female Guyver, or what that would have, like, because I think that's actually a unique spin on this. And but like you said, I didn't think about it in terms of what you said of like, because the Guyver suit really actually it penetrates your body.
Yeah, like it basically uses the human body as like a host, and then it comes out right before battle or as needed. And actually in the manga, like the Guyver unit itself can almost act on its own if the host is incapacitated in some sequences. But one cool thing out of that original OVA is that the female Guyver idea was not in the manga at that point, and they actually used that and incorporated into the manga later on, so it kind of actually becomes official canon. And then after that, there's basically a remake of that 53-minute movie. From 1989 to 1992, there's a 12-part OVA release called The Guyver Bio-Boosted Armor, which is based again on the first 5 volumes of the manga. There's a couple different story beat differences, nothing that I think is significant that people would actually like recognize. But there's like this thing called the Hyper Zoenoid Team 5, which gets introduced in that particular story a lot earlier than you have in the source material. That did get actually picked up and distributed in the US. There was a dub and a sub for it. And you can find it pretty easily on YouTube at this point. And there's actually 3 directors. So Koichi Ishiguro, who actually did 4 episodes of Spectre Man. Again, that's another Japanese title. There is another guy, Masahiro Otani, who did Shin Tetsujin 28, which is a pretty popular, well-known title in Japan as well. And then probably the most, at least in my opinion, the most famous guy is Nyoto Hashimoto, who card capture Sakura, did a couple episodes of Death Note, and also worked on one of the Lupin the Third movies. So, like, there is some pretty good talent working on those. And then, of course, you have music by Reijiro Kuroku, and he was the composer for Godzilla 1985. Which is probably how Byrd and I know, and he's know him the best, and he's actually going to be a part of Kaiju Masterclass, which we had just brought up at the beginning of this show.
First English language interview.
Which is, I mean, that's pretty awesome. But like when you listen to like his Guyver work and his Godzilla work, I think you see some similarities, but the music in that's actually really awesome. But that's the 12-part OVA is pretty fun. It's a bit more faithful in terms of like source material compared to the original movie. And then in 2005 to 2006, you get probably the better known of there's a 26 episode kind of standard, 13 episode per season anime called Guyver the Bio Boosted Armor. That's going to be the most recent production. It's directed by the guy who actually animated the 90s show, the Thundercats. You guys ever watch the Thundercats as kids when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Panthro was the coolest one.
So the key animator for that directed the 2005, 2006 Guyver Bio Boosted Armor. I think the coolest thing to note about that is actually it was co-produced by ADV Films, now defunct, of course, and Kitagawa, and it was actually produced for something like $750K, and it was animated by OLM Studios of Pokemon fame, and Berserk, which Berserk is a really popular anime title as well. It got it released by Funimation. And then the music was done by Hayato Matsuo, which Final Fantasy 12, he did the game Shenmue, or Shenmue, which is one of my favorite games. And then like Hellsing Ultimate. So like really, really good talent working on that show. Probably the coolest idea that makes it into the anime that doesn't actually originate from like the source material is when Guyver loses its arm, it actually regenerates into like a clone that goes berserk, which is a really neat idea. And that anime covers basically everything up until when what they call Guyver Gigantic shows. So one thing that's really different about the manga and the anime properties or the anime shows, you have a ton more Guyvers that show up in those compared to the movies. So that's something that is different. You talked about like, hey, there's a female Guyver. That's a cool idea. Well, that's an idea that is in the anime as well. You have multiple different Guyvers that show up. The problem is the anime is not, or the manga isn't actually done yet. Like it just kind of abruptly, has not been published since 2016. So nobody knows how the story ends, which is maybe one of the reasons why you haven't seen or heard anything from the franchise officially, like from an anime or a movie standpoint since 2005 and 2006, because it just kind of abruptly ends at a point where, hey, what's going to happen next?
Well, Game of Thrones showed us that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that might not be the best idea.
No, this whole sequence it's been going on for a good 10 minutes now. The monster's beating up the hero and the girl, and the guy, like he couldn't turn into the Guyver. Like I didn't quite understand like why.
I guess I don't know if it's something. By the way, this thing of like the armor slapping onto him. A lot of those shots were a miniature.
Right. But
and they would,
very
like,
good miniature.
yeah. They talk about that a little bit there's an interview with Yuzna where he kind of talks about that. But yeah, I think, God, I haven't seen the second movie nearly as much so as this one. So maybe Matt can help me. But Matt, in the second movie, isn't there is there a plot point about him like trying to learn to control his transformation? Because I don't think he's supposed to be able to control it, at least not yet.
Yeah, he kind of like, I think essentially the movie starts off with him like not really being in control of it because of the trauma from everything that happens in like the first movie. That's at least how I remember it. It's been a couple years since I've rewatched that, but that's my foggy memory on it. By the way, this rap is awesome.
I want that Guyver jiving thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, story Steve told us about the warehouse sequence here is that I guess Yuzna was, I don't know if he was looking at dailies or what, but he was looking at stuff from this, and it was, I guess, horrible. And he called and he kind of like reamed Steve about it. He said, you guys don't know what you're doing. Like, and then Steve, right there, we lose a shot of him ripping off that monster's arm, and some blood spill. It's one of those gore cuts that we talked about. But anyway, and so Steve viewed the footage and was like, "Yeah, this is horrible." So they fired that editor, and Steve was like, I'm just gonna edit this myself. And Yuzna jumped up and down about it and yelled at him and said, "No, you're not. We're gonna hire another editor." And he pretty much said, "I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. I'm going to edit this scene." And Brian was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna get a new editor." And Steve was like, "Sure, whatever." And then he basically spent that entire weekend. He talked to, I guess, an assistant editor that they had, and he was like, "Show me how to operate all the equipment, and I'm just gonna do it myself." And he showed him, and he was like, "Okay, you showed me how to do it. You can go home now." And then he edited a bunch of this warehouse scene, and Yuzna came in on Monday, and he was like, "All right, okay, idiot, show me what you did." And he was like, "Oh, this is actually like pretty good." So Steve, he ended up editing about 30% of the movie, and I guess that was kind of a turning point where Yuzna kind of left him alone a little bit more and didn't kind of treat him as a scapegoat. But
I mean, I think this movie's, I mean, you have to be the audience for it, and you have to take into account, the time this movie was made, the resources, whatever. But for what it is, I think the movie's actually pretty good, in all honesty. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely silly, and it's definitely campy, and a lot of the comedy really isn't funny.
But I don't know about you guys.
It's very entertaining, and I love the art direction. I love the monster suits.
But like, I don't know about you guys, but I could see the criticism for sure at the time, being like, "Oh, it's goofy, it's whatever." But it's like, don't you kind of feel like that's how movies are now? Like, I almost think this thing plays more modern than it is, because it's like, it's like you watch a Marvel movie and it's like there's
tons of comedy.
Yeah, tons of comedy, cringe comedy in between the most dramatic moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you really started to see that in the late '90s and early 2000s.
Yeah,
and it kind of just never went away.
Like, you could be making a monster movie, and if you didn't get at least 2 or 3 good laughs from the audience during the film, you were seen as doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like comedy became a prerequisite for pretty much all genres of films, it seemed like.
Yeah, I think this, like, where this movie struggles a bit for me is the weird, like, tonal shift between all the jokes and the very on the nose campiness to like some of the different battle sequences.
It's one of those things where like the two tones they go together like oil and water, but like there's so few movies that are quite like that it
It does kind of work in some respects.
It makes it an experience that doesn't feel like something that you're gonna see. It's like one of the worst things about it is one of the best things about it, in that it's one of the things that really makes it stand out and feel unique. Because you're not gonna see a movie with this much horror in
Right.
it that also feels like it was made for children. It's really strange, and I don't know. That's kind of part of why I like it.
Yeah.
It's like it's a weird thing to say. Yeah, one of the biggest reasons I don't like it is because it doesn't work. But here we are.
I mean, what year did this movie come out? Wasn't it literally like 1990?
92?
92.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you think this movie would have, like, as far as going for the kids audience, don't you think this movie would have been like, if it would have come out like 95, 96 after the whole Power Ranger movement, I think more people would have been, interested in it, seeking it out, watching it if it would have come out.
Yeah,
after.
that's yeah, this is kind of around the time that Power Rangers is coming out, and
Yeah.
and I mean everything from the fighting sequences to the Guyver himself being partially inspired by those Toei superheroes. Yeah, I think it might have, I guess, had a little bit more of an immediate success.
Yeah, I think this movie was about 3 years ahead of its time, in all honesty.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it comes out before Power Rangers, before like VR Troopers or Superhuman Cyber Squad or whatever that show was. That was taking Gridman, which is another Japanese property, and bringing it to the U.S. So it's doing stuff before its time for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean it came out theatrically in Japan, but here and most places it went straight to video. So, but they did lean into that video marketing, because I remember that, like, the cover is it's very intentionally meant to look like a Ninja Turtles cover.
Right.
And the UK title was what? Mutronics, right, which is intended to invoke the mutants from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
By the way, we just had we just had a really good look at the female Zoenoid suit, and it has these like big female breasts on it.
Yeah, like pointy breasts. Yeah, I noticed that.
Like with nipples and everything. So again, that's a whole other. They probably had this suit like made when when this was still supposed to be this like R-rated gritty.
But I mean, I don't think it was like the breast and the nipples and everything. I don't think that was like put in there to be salacious. I think that was honestly put there so you could know that was the female member of the group. So
but in like a PG production that might have like some kind of bra armor or something.
Yeah, yeah. Or just have more hair covering the chest area or something. Yeah,
I think that part where he slashes her, that's another one where we lost a little bit of gore footage. Yeah. I think that's it though. I don't know that there's another thing in here that's missing a lot of that.
No,
the gore stuff. They're minimal cuts.
Yeah, like this where he rips the ball out of the Guyver's head. Yeah, it's pretty gory. I guess that ball was kind of like the power source of the Guyver.
Yeah, so that is the unit itself, and that little plot beat is in the source material where like there's a death and rebirth, and this is awesome body horror, by the way. Like they cut out some of that stuff, but this got in somehow, which is like pretty grotesque, as like it's just melting away.
This is cool. That has to be a wax.
Yeah, they're melting it.
Wax melting.
I always love that effect that they do in movies. Like a lot of times they do it with like a skull melting, but
yeah, they do it in there's stuff like that in Evil Dead and
like Nightmare on Elm Street. They do the reverse, like they melt Freddy and then they show it in reverse, so it looks like he's forming back together. Like I miss those kind of simple tricks of film. You know what I mean?
A weird plot element that we didn't mention is it's revealed that the two like FBI or CIA guys that Mark Hamill like is reporting to, like that they're Zoanoids too. There's the one guy is the one that he killed and ripped the arm off, but it's weird that doesn't really go anywhere. I guess there's at the very end, there's something that maybe could be considered a sequel stinger, but Steve Wang was like, "Fuck this," so he didn't.
I think the agents being in on it and being monsters themselves, it just didn't really go anywhere. But it was just like that thing of putting an extra layer of conspiracy on top of everything,
This goes all the way to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. First, I just want to mention this is David Gale like reliving his Reanimator sequences, or trying to anyway, which is again.
Yes.
And then the whole thing with Kronos, like the idea behind them is that they are everywhere, and in the manga, like they essentially take over the world, and you basically have people who their whole plan is to turn humans into Zoanoids, period, across the world. So like that's where the whole they have cops, they have people in power, that kind of stuff. That's where that idea comes from. But yeah, you're right. For this movie, it doesn't really go anywhere.
I remember Steve Wang telling us like when this, when they were working on the script and having to keep revising it, like he would meet with the screenwriters and be like trying to explain like the Guyver lore and all that, and they would just be like, we don't. Just saying like they didn't understand it, and they weren't really trying to understand it, so they're probably just some work for hire guys. And he was like, look, I'm trying to like tell you like the inner workings of this franchise, and they're just like, oh, well, whatever. That might be part of it.
It's like, how are you going to do an adaptation when you don't really know anything about it yourself?
Right. Yeah, this is the rest of the movie is kind of like all this like lab stuff, which I always really like stuff like this.
I thought, it's like a lot of times when you do a low budget film, locations and everything. This is impressive though. This hallway that has all.
That's a miniature.
Okay, yeah, it looks great.
That's a miniature and a composite. I'm not sure if David Gale and Vivian Wu actually were ever in a room with all those like big test tubes and stuff. But yeah, they say that in the extras on here, they say this is all miniature, and then for the shots where they're walking, it's kind of just it's composited in, which is pretty cool filmmaking.
Yeah, like I gotta say, like for this being a $3 million film, you could have like told me that this was like a $20 million film, and I wouldn't have batted an eye. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much production value, and like I said before, that's obviously Steve Wang and Screaming Mad George. Just bringing a lot of like artistry, and I'm sure just doing effects for way under their market value just to contribute to the film. But I mean, it's a real treat, and I think especially modern times like now, sitting down and watch this movie, like anybody who hasn't seen it, I would really say go check it out, because it's like you're just gonna see a lot of stuff in this movie that you just don't see anymore, period. It's like if they were to make this movie now, like I'm sure the majority of the monsters and probably the Guyver too, they'd all be CGI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the monster suits are especially great, and I mean these guys were their work on Predator was considered like revolutionary. Yeah. So this exposition dump that he gives is pretty much just repeating what we saw in that crawl. That title crawl,
yeah, I'm sure that title crawl probably wasn't meant to originally ever be there, but when they said they were going more for the kids market, I'm sure they probably were just like, oh, we gotta I think you could kind of do a version of this movie where it's more the Zoanoids are like more going around doing evil stuff, like, and like maybe the Guyver's hunting them, instead of like this movie's more about the Zoanoids hunting the Guyver because they want to possess it, the technology or whatever.
Here we have David Gale talking about how Zoanoids are the next step in evolution, and one day you may see a White House full of them, which I'm pretty sure we've seen in real life at this point.
Yeah, there was rumors of one of the presidents from a few years back being actually a reptilian monster. I remember that. And there was supposedly a like a brothel where aliens would intermingle with like tigers and stuff. I thought that was like an insane, and that's like going back to like before really the internet was even that big of a deal. So I mean, weird conspiracies have been talked about for decades.
Here we have Jeffrey Combs playing Dr. East. Get it?
Yeah, as opposed to Herbert West.
Yeah,
wink, wink,
yeah.
nudge. I thought this. I mean, obviously Brian Usna, and I guess we talked about Brian Usna, whether it was his fault or not, colliding with Screaming. By the way, Screaming Man George, his real name is actually Joji. I didn't know that till today. But yeah, Screaming Man George and Steve Wang. But this is where I feel like the Brian Usna, kind of touch pays off. Is this mini Reanimator reunion we get? To me, like, because I forgot Combs was even in this, and I was just like, like before I rewatched it, I saw his name in the credits, obviously, but this was like a little treat for me to see.
You know what's cool is, like I said, I watched this movie on TV when I was little, and it was on all the time. So, it was something I was familiar with. So when, 2 or 3 years ago, when I rewatched it, it was really fun to see all these, like, as I grew up and into an adult and is like became a big horror fan. It was really fun to see all these actors in this that, I didn't, when I was a kid watching this, I didn't know who any of these people were. So it was fun to see, oh, there's Jeffrey Combs, there's Michael Berryman, there's Linnea Quigley, so and so on and so forth.
And I think more than anything, because like if this movie had a completely no-name cast, it still would be burned into your memory because of the special effects and everything. But I think, putting together a cast like this, it makes the film even more unique and, more special in its own way.
Yeah, but yeah, like what you were saying, I've described this as like, if you've ever wondered what it was like, what would happen if Brian Usna tried to make a kids movie, I mean, this is pretty much it. It's just as gooey and gross and goopy as anything else he's had his name on.
It's too, it's like it's a little bit of a middling plot anytime you have a MacGuffin chase and all that kind of thing. But this movie is like, so there's really very little fat, if at all, on it that, just kind of like set up, pay off with the action scene.
It really breezes by. I think that's part of why, I know, at least as far as Guyver fans go, I'm in the minority in preferring this to the second one, because the second one is much longer, and this one just, it's a nice lean kind of 90 minutes.
You're right.
Yeah, the second one is definitely more about the action pieces, and I think I'm an idiot and I like the second one more than the first one because I think it's a bit closer to the source material.
Well, in actual Guyver fandom, this movie is not. This is seen very much as not, true to the, not true to the source material. Fans. I imagine, Guyver fans hearing me talk about how much I like this movie is like hearing, like, me listening to someone talk about how much they like the 1998 Godzilla. This is very much not.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
This is very much not representative of the Guyver property.
So there's a couple cool things about that, though. Like, one is the 2005-2006 anime is fairly close to the source material, but also like any changes that were made were basically run by the guy that created himself. Yoshi Takaya. So like he also gave that same degree of latitude to Steve Wang when he got to direct the second film. Like, he basically met with them. They talked about the different kinds of changes and stuff that he wanted to make, and he gave his blessing to make those. So like, he's given people the ability to go in and take this property and do different things with it, which is that's pretty cool if you ask me, because some people are like, we don't want to have any changes. We want to have a very strict control about it. And this guy's like, yeah, do whatever you want.
Unless Blu-ray
this is better than the OVA. Like, if you've seen the OVA, it's not great. But the 2005-2006 anime, that actually is worth your time if you're wanting to seek something out.
I like how the Jeffrey Combs monster still has his glasses and tie.
Yeah, there's some good quirks in this. There's almost like this one that's back there in the lab coat. I was getting some Baxter Stockman vibes too.
Yeah, the one that I don't know what kind of sounds it's supposed. I don't know if it's supposed to sound like insect sounds, but it sounds more like just like a baby.
Yeah,
like
yeah, I know.
Baby sounds.
I really like the one too that's got like the really like skinny head, like almost like a little crocodile snake head.
Yeah, it's almost hard to choose a favorite monster. I like the Berryman one quite a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Berryman one with the way the jaw is. It's kind of the one that reminds me of the most of Predator, but but it's just fascinating because we're sitting here and like if you just would have had one of these suits in the early '80s, you would have had a pretty probably solid monster flick. And we're sitting watching a room full of suits. It just kind of even today it kind of blows my mind in all honesty.
Well, the thing is, you look at the suits and it's like there's not a bad one in the bunch.
Right.
You know, they're all way above what you would expect from a production like this.
They look much above like the budget that we know this movie has, in my opinion, especially for the sheer amount of them.
Yeah. Like if you tell me $3 million budget, I'm thinking there's going to be one monster suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It would almost be like a lot of people would like. There was the one that he kills earlier, though, that in the warehouse where they cut out the part where he rips the monster's arm off. Like this is like in another movie that same suit would be reused for someone else,
right?
Like in this scene or something like that.
Well, even in the beginning, like I was saying, the original scientist guy was trying to hide the Guyver suit. His suit was, very good quality, and he was. They showed it for like maybe 60 seconds.
Yeah, we just saw the Guyver elbow blade come and slice open the Jeffrey Combs creature to like the Jaws music, and now and so there's more of that comedy, quote unquote comedy, that is just not funny, but also kind of amazing. And of course, more gross slime.
Chest burster scene. And I like the little it's almost like an antenna that comes out of the middle of the Guyver's head too. I like that. I like how it kind of like pops up. But yeah, it just they made. I guess maybe where the budget shows a little bit is a good bit of the running time is in the warehouse sequence and now in the lab sequence. But like they do a good job of kind of camouflaging early in the film when everybody's like kind of like the human actors. They do a good job of kind of getting out around the town and showing you a lot of different locations. So like the movie never truly feels that claustrophobic. You never feel like it's like a one room movie or anything.
Yeah, I actually think these are good fight scenes. Steve Coria did a lot of the choreography himself, which he told us he felt like it was bad and he's kind of embarrassed about. And I told him to shut up.
Well, like I understand, like because later on, Steve Wang directed an awesome movie called Drive with Mark Dacascos, Kadeem Hardison.
Yeah, that just got a Blu-ray release.
Yeah, I got it. I had the import for a long time of the director's cut, but that's like literally one of my favorite movies of the '90s or whatever. But
I didn't know that about you, but that just feels I could have told you that about yourself without me even knowing it.
And I was pretty much
that's a very you movie.
Yeah, I was pretty much a fan from day one, just because it was one of those ones that premiered on HBO. Like it wasn't an HBO original movie; it was an independent movie, but they kind of premiered it on HBO. So I remember like watching it and being blown away by it. And like, yeah, I could see maybe like, oh yeah, compared to Drive, but like the thing about it is like. I'm shocked that the choreography can be as good as it is in this movie when these guys are in these giant suits that weigh up a lot. They only got so much movement. I mean, the movement is good, but you'll be ripping the latex and everything if you really go all too crazy in these things.
I got to ask Matt, as far as differences between the movies and the original version, like what's like how. As far as the actual storyline, how much is different? Like, I mean, obviously the two movies have Sean as the protagonist. So I mean, what Is the character similar in the Japanese
So like
manga and anime and stuff?
there's like some of the stuff is definitely ripped right out of the manga and the anime. Some of it's very different. The opening sequence with the scientist, that is straight out of the manga. There's basically a chase scene where they're uh trying to recover the Guyver unit. Like that story is how the show opens up. Um, but there's like a lot more. I mean, when you're talking about the manga just has a ton more characters. Like you have like police officers, you have this best friend who's very prominent to the story that doesn't appear in like either movie. But like the idea that there's a second Guyver unit or there's multiple Guyver units, that's again part of the original story. In the second movie, there's some stuff there too that like is straight out of the manga. And then like again the monster suits and designs, like some of these are coming directly from the source material, are actually like pretty close. Like the furry one we talked about is ripped pretty much straight off the
Is
page.
is the character's origin, like the main character, is that pretty similar to what we have here?
He's basically like he's a student um in the original story. Like it's just a kid that happens to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and the Guyver unit is it basically during a battle gets like blown up and like sent towards him, and then it ends up, instead of like him falling face first on it, it basically like explodes out in the air and like kind of envelops him. Like there's some difference in that kind of stuff. So like it's, instead of being like a karate student, he's just a regular kid, which is pretty common with like the shonen anime stuff.
So it's more like a Peter Parker.
Yeah, that would be a better comparison.
We just had a couple weird things with Mark Hamill and Vivian Wu like running back and forth across the screen like a Scooby Doo kind of.
Yeah,
I did laugh at that out loud. By the way, it was. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, here it is again.
I kind of
chased by like the Cronenberg fly, basically.
Yeah, I kind of like that though, because it's like those little kind of goofy comedy shots, whatever. They're a good excuse just to show like the monster suits running around more. You know what I mean? Yeah, this guy's like a larvae, like T-Rex type creature.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah. And then he gets knocked out by a microscope to the face.
But nothing against low budget films. I love low budget films, but I mean this is if you compare this to like of other direct to video fare of the time, like I mean I'm no offense to other movies, but this blows away anything like Carnosaur or anything else that came out at that time.
Yeah, there's a lot of like especially like the 90s kind of straight to video monster movies, that you were getting from Full Moon, or I mean this really is kind of a step above. This looks like something that could have played in theaters for sure.
And I'm kind of surprised it wasn't, because it wasn't a New Line that put it together here or distributed here. And like New Line really did a great job back in the day of taking like really small movies and like New Line was kind of like canon films, but for more like genre pictures, and it's just like they would usually milk every drop, but I guess they were just getting so big at the time that like I feel like if this would have come out like 10 years earlier or like even 5 years earlier, but I guess after that Ninja Turtles success, they're like, oh, we'll just dump it onto video and make the money there. That
was pretty brutal what we just
got his head open.
Imagine if like that happened in a Ninja Turtles movie. Like, that wouldn't be okay. That would not be okay.
Well, it's funny too, though, because it's like you can have giant monsters be brutal to each other, and like people don't really, like you can have King Kong rip the T-Rex's head open, and people don't really whatever. But like it seems like it hits harder when you're just talking about human-sized monsters, which like. This isn't technically a kaiju film because these are not giant monsters. But this is one thing I want to ask you guys about these suits.
If you want to table that for a minute, because I feel like this is
incredible.
I am not kidding when I say, to this day, as a 36-year-old adult who has at this point seen so many more fucked up movies than this is still one of the most horrific sequences I've seen. And this is every bit as upsetting as anything you would see in a Cronenberg film. You know, anything out of The Fly. Like, this is every bit as disturbing. And it's amazing that, you know, they were like, oh, you know, let's cut this shot of them ripping open ripping off this arm. This is legitimately horrifying. And you know, now that I am older, I wonder if seeing stuff like this when I was so young is part of why I have such a fascination with body horror films, because I you know, I don't know if that's why, but like, it's just the idea that this guy who was like a very normal, upstanding person would transform into such a hideous creature.
Yeah, he's like, we should say Mark Hamill just turned into basically a giant cockroach.
Yeah, and the effects and everything are just as good as something that you would see in a lot of the, you know, it like I said, it's up the transformation sequences. It's up there with some of the best ones, and it's really disturbing. Like, I can't imagine a child. I mean, granted, I was a child that saw this, but like, I can't imagine like a child watching that. Well, and the fact that I think one of the things that bothered me, yeah, the transformation itself is really disturbing, and I part of that is because I think they had Mark Hamill's actual face for a lot of it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it didn't happen to a villain, you know, because you know, when Ninja Turtles, like, oh, you know, you're all the bad guy like, the Ninja Turtles themselves are mutated turtles, and then mostly everyone else they're bad guys. And this is where I think seeing a good guy go through something so horrific at a young age, and to have it look as real as it did, it just like, and to this day, it's still one of the most disturbing sequences.
Well, it seems like it's designed really to mess with kids too, that you're watching this happen to Mark Hamill, like Luke Skywalker, you know.
Right. Yeah. And this is one of those things that when I watched it, I was like, oh, you know, went along my day, but then like going to bed at night, like, the image is like, I can't get this image of cockroach Mark Hamill out of my head, you know.
There's a so this is probably the closest thing I can think of from like the manga would be, so Sho is the main character. In the manga, his father gets captured and he gets turned into an anti-Guyver weapon, which is pretty horrific and like super sad. That's probably the closest comparison to what happened to Mark Hamill's character. Like, just it's really, that part in the series is actually like just very sad and brutal and upsetting. So like, and you're right. I think the thing that got me about this transformation is Mark Hamill's head gliding across the floor as his neck extends.
Oh God, I know.
It's just very frustrating. Like,
it's upsetting to watch. It's still.
Again, this is a kids movie, guys.
Incredible, and also like his performance, like he starts kind of like convulsing and like it's
he's clearly in pain. And it'd be one thing if he just turned into like kind of like a green flesh monster. He turns into this weird lobstery cockroach thing that's just horrible to look at onto itself, you know?
Yeah, it's like this, and then seeing The Fly as a teenager. I was probably too young to see both, and now it's like I like, body horror is like my second favorite subgenre. It's like kaiju movies and body horror. So, thank you. I don't know if I.
Yeah, I always thought that was funny about you, Byrd, how big you were into the body horror genre, because it's not a genre that you really hear people like. I mean, a lot of horror fans, of course, they know what body horror is, but very few do you see people that like just kind of plant their flag and be like, "I'm a body horror fan."
Yeah, and it never goes through like a big thing, like slashers, ghost stories, like those genres, like, you know, they go through their ups and downs. They're super mainstream, then they're not, then they're mainstream again, then they're not. Body horror it just kind of is a thing that kind of rears its head every now and then, from the gross, gooey depths. David Gale turns into this giant dinosaur looking.
Yeah, he actually technically kind of is a kaiju at this point.
Yeah.
It's getting This reminds me of the ending of Zerum Bird a little bit, with like the weird transformations and and like specifically the prop versus the protagonist.
Yeah. This is obviously a big head that he just stabbed, but yeah, I guess a lot of this was a miniature creature in a miniature set.
It's actually, for the most part, from what I can tell, like at least so far, it's not really stop motion either. It's just like giant puppeteering.
Yeah. Cool monster though.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we had to like devote a whole thing to that transformation. But you were saying something. We were talking about the suits.
I was talking about the suits and like do you think like especially like the Michael Berryman one and some of the other ones, do you think they could have translated to an actual kaiju film, like have those exact same suits stomping cities and stuff?
I mean, you get a lot of reptilian kind of kaiju, but they would definitely fit in with something like War of the Gargantuas, or the more humanoid
Ultraman. Like, I mean, if you think of like the shows like Ultraman, they have a bunch of weird, unique, crazy looking monster designs, and it would be fine. Like, I think you can make it work pretty easily.
The suits are already very Japanese inspired. We talked about the Kamen Rider influence, and this, speaking of, this is the what is the weapon called? The Mega Smasher? What is it? The something Smasher?
Mega Smasher? Yeah, it's Mega Smasher. I had to think about
that was the Guyver creator's homage to Godzilla's atomic breath, and that's what we just saw take out the big David Gale dinosaur thing.
Yeah, and it's like when you think about that, they pulled that off, that giant monster, and like it had like puppeted arms and stuff, but when they pulled that off on this budget, I mean,
it's cut together really well. The stuff from the miniature to the big head and all that stuff. So
yeah, it actually worked. Like I really wish they would have kind of had this same crew to do the Spawn movie with the with the stuff they could have done with like instead of that terrible CGI devil.
God,
they could have done
Spawn
a great
movie.
beast. Yeah,
Spawn movie. Even that was what, 95 or something.
I want to say it was 97, but I could be wrong.
Okay, you might be right, but I mean, even for 97, that looked bad.
Yeah, and I mean that was like like, oh, last minute we decided to do whatever. I mean, the Violator looks good in Spawn. It's about the only thing that does look really good.
Those hell scenes?
Yeah, but the hell scenes, yeah, you could have populated that with some great suitmation creatures or even puppets. And yeah, it was 97 it came out, and it's just like, I don't know, it's like it's just crazy for a movie that's so much bigger budget it couldn't do what this film did,
So I guess he's naked now because he came out of that other. I guess when the Guyver itself, does that hold the person or the essence of the person in it? Because the Jeffrey Combs monster swallowed it and then he came out of it.
Yeah.
Is that is that like a thing, or is that just like
that happens in the?
Or is that just like the how Steve Wang was saying the writers didn't understand that?
No, so like the Guyver unit, once it bonds with whoever, it does actually retain them. And there's a whole, again, that plot where like the Guyver gets defeated and comes back. That does happen in the source material as well. So that's again another, like, when people say this isn't faithful, like. It's faithful enough. It's not like Godzilla 98,
Yeah, I thought it was cool, the idea of like, his body got destroyed and that little ball part was like available. And pretty much all it needed to do was be encased in flesh again. And it basically transformed the inside of that monster's flesh into him, I think it was pretty cool.
This ending with the CIA guy and the Jimmy Walker creature. I don't. He says like, I have a mission for you or something. I got a job for you. Yeah, this had to have been some kind of sequel cliffhanger.
Yeah,
and then
or they just wanted him to say dynamite, man.
Yep. We got to see him say
he
dynamite.
Finally said it right. Which I almost.
Steve said that when he did the sequel, he basically tried to retain as little as possible from this movie. So that's probably why that plot thread doesn't get picked up.
Like the sequel, they even have the Guyver played by a different actor as well.
Yeah, David Hayter, who is also a screenwriter. I think he's He's the screenwriter and he's the voice of Solid Snake.
Yeah,
in,
Solid Snake, a man of many
Metal
talents.
Gear Solid. Yeah.
Yeah,
But he wrote Watchmen, and I think he wrote one of the X-Men movies.
Yeah, he's big. I wish he would come back and play Solid Snake in the movie instead of Oscar Isaac.
Was it? I always lost track of that because it seemed like for a few years it was like every 6 months a different actor was was in talks to play Solid Snake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of like I'll believe it when the movie comes out type thing, but you know.
Yeah.
Wayne Toth, another guy that's in the credits.
I was gonna say for effects nerds, there's a few names in here. Yeah, Wayne, he's done a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's the Guyver. No, this I don't know. I still have a really good time with this.
Was there any more trivia that you had, Matt, that you think we should know about the Guyver?
No, I mean, I think we basically covered it. I would say if you like this movie and you're interested in like learning more about it, first of all, you got to check out the sequel, which is Guyver 2 Dark Hero. And then I do think specifically like the 2005, 2006 anime is worth a watch. It's pretty easy to track down.
Is that one of those? I think it's on Hulu.
Yeah, it's on Hulu, and it's 26 episodes. It's probably the most complete Guyver telling of the story, besides like picking up a combination of officially released stuff that's now 10 years out of print, and like the scanlation stuff, which are like the fan translated bits. I think that would be something that if you like this and you want to see like the actual story itself, then go pick up that. It's pretty. The anime is also like very violent. I mean, bodies get sliced and people get ripped apart on a frequent basis. So like if you love the body horror, it's there in the anime as well.
Seems like the monsters are a little bit more fantastical in the anime. I remember Steve Wang saying for doing the movie he wanted them to feel a little more grounded and like something that you could do with like practical effects better.
Yeah, right. You get a little bit of that. Like they end up flying around and stuff, and there's bits like that. And the designs do get a bit more, I mean, for lack of a better term, like they're anime-ish, where like they do get very exaggerated.
Yeah, I know. We're spoiler alert. We're planning on doing the second Guyver movie, but that'll probably be a few months from now. Between then, I might see if I can squeeze in watching some of the anime.
Yeah, I definitely at least want to check out a couple episodes just to get the feel of it, in comparison to this movie.
It starts out pretty quick if you watch like the first 2 episodes. I would say like if you could watch the 50-minute OVA, which is the original one, the original OVA, but I don't think it's very good. The 12-parter is okay. I definitely think the 2005, 2006 is the way to go.
So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it on a Guyver. Just I'd say like a good little oddity of early '90s filmmaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The 2005 one is on Hulu, so I should check that out.
We should check it out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something else exciting. Let's talk about the Kaiju Masterclass.
Okay. You want us to?
Well, I wanted to ask you guys, what was the genesis of this project? This is the second year, we should add, but what was the original genesis of this event?
Matt, you want me to take this one?
Yeah, you can take that.
Okay. So if you really want to get like into the way backstory, there was a video by a YouTuber, one of the Kaiju YouTubers, which was from the Monstrosities vlog. But he made a video about how in the 90s, growing up, there were a lot of books and articles and interviews and stuff with, a lot of the Japanese creators, people that would go to Japan and interview people and things like that. And he was just kind of lamenting how there's so much less of that these days. The guy that made that video, Matt Burkett, he's actually this year we actually brought him onto the organizational team. But anyway, in the comments, so Tom, who Jelly as you and your listeners Jelly might know, he reshared that video on Facebook, and in the comments that kind of got a little conversation going between a guy named Steve Reifel, who has written a lot about Japanese movies and just film in general. Many years, he's been a journalist. He wrote the official and family endorsed biography of Ishiro Honda, the director of the original Godzilla and many of the classic movies. He wrote that with another guy named Ed Godzacheski, who this year we also added to our organizational team. But he wrote that book, that official biography, which, by the way, has a foreword by Martin Scorsese. So
amazing.
So
Scorsese.
technically, I would just like to say I'm 1 degree away from Martin Scorsese.
I'd say even closer.
Anyway, but yeah, so on Tom's share of that video, he started talking to a guy named Eric Hominick, who was the official biographer of Akira Ifukube, who does the music for a lot of the classic Godzilla films. He's in charge of the official website, which is basically a biography in website form. And I don't know, they were kind of talking and almost like kind of joking about like, yeah, it's true. Why doesn't anyone talk to anyone anymore? And it was like serious. And they were like, seriously though, it would be fun to like have like maybe an event in, on the West Coast or something. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And virtual conventions were kind of the talk of the town everywhere. And so one day I woke up and like I was looking at I opened up my Facebook Messenger and it's like, Steve Reifel has sent you a message. And I'm like, what? We had him on the podcast, when that book came out, but it's like, and I'd met him at G-Fest and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Keep in mind, Steve Reifel is a guy that like I was reading his books and stuff when I was in like elementary school.
Amazing.
So and he was like, he sent a message to me and he was like, what would you think if we actually did a convention that was all about the artists, the artistry, and the history of this stuff? And I was like, that sounds really awesome. And he was like, well, why do you want to like help put it together? I was like, I'll help in any way I can. And then me and another guy, Patrick Galvin, who was he's written for sci-fi.com and Toho Kingdom and some other websites. He got a similar message, and then so it's me, Steve, Patrick, and Eric, and then we talk a little bit, and then we shortly after that we brought Matt in because we started talking about like social media stuff, and I'm like, I don't know the first thing about any of this. Maybe Parmley knows some stuff. So then Matt here joins the team, and then we also got John DeSantis, who conducted a few concerts of the Ifukube Godzilla music, and he's worked with Eric Hominick a lot, so we brought him on, and that was like the original team. And so then we started doing like Zoom meetings and we decided date, and we kind of had a wish list of like, I don't think we really expected anyone to like say yes to us. We're just like, okay,
Right.
here, who are some people that like we know they're on Facebook, we can find their email addresses easily, or some or in the case of Steve, someone that you've interviewed before for an article or a documentary or something. And so we kind of came up with a list of people, and we were like, okay, well, this is what we're going for, and if we're lucky, one of them will say yes. But almost everyone said yes. So last year we had, like I mentioned at the top of the show, like we had Shinji Higuchi, who did Shin Godzilla and had a huge part in Neon Genesis Evangelion. And we had Shusuke Kaneko. We had Shinichi Wakasa, who built a lot of the Godzilla suits in the 2000s. We had Michiro Oshima, who composed music for a few of the 2000s movies. She also she just recently composed music for a couple of the Star Wars Visions episodes on Disney Plus. We had Bear McCreary, David Arnold, who did the music for Godzilla '98, and I mean a whole bunch of other guests. But we were like, okay, we'll be lucky if we get one of these guys. And then they all were like, okay. We were like, okay, what's happening?
Next thing you know, you got a full blown like online convention.
It was insane, man. We were adding people, I think, up 1 or 2 weeks up into the event. People that like we had. I mean, I think Higuchi was kind of a very late add, and this year, like we just continued to bring people that we hadn't talked to before. I think of like Rojiro Kuroku, who Return of Godzilla, which is known in the U.S. as like Godzilla 1985, is probably the one. It's the first Godzilla movie that I saw, but like nobody's talked to the guy, and he's gonna be doing his first English language interview, which is, I mean, for me, and just kind of incredible to think about. And
well, it's like I always say in our Zoom meetings when a name comes up, I always say like these guys aren't getting any younger,
Right.
and like just a few months ago we lost Sonny Chiba. I mean, like Matt was lucky enough to interview Sonny Chiba for Kaiju Transmissions, but I mean, where that's going to happen a lot is like, if no one, it's like if we're going to talk to these people, we might as well talk to them.
Exactly. And I hate to say it, but we're at the point now in time and history where people that even did the 80s and 90s stuff aren't going to be around forever. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just think it's great, and I think it's like a great culmination, because it's like, we talked about, I've known you guys, and like I watched this thing kind of grow from just being two friends who love these type of movies, doing a little homegrown podcast, to then you guys like just for your own pleasure visiting conventions, meeting people.
Yeah, we still don't get paid for any of it,
we
like doing it. Yeah,
exactly. It's just a labor of love, and just seeing you guys do all the, and like I've been blown away by the people you interviewed, either at just conventions real quick, or for the podcast and whatever. And then like next thing I know, you guys are doing panels, and then this thing happens, and I'm just like, I think it's just really inspiring to show that, in a weird way, because we're like in this weird place with a lot of there's a lot of money to be made off of fandoms, and all you hear about is the bad side of fandoms. And I think this is like the good side of it, that the press doesn't talk, because the press likes to stir a lot of stuff up because it gets them their little clicks or whatever. But I just think, reaching out to the creators of some of these projects and getting their word on it, and they're happy to talk about it, and they're willing to talk about it. I mean, I just think it's a great thing,
Yeah. And another thing about that is, especially with something like Godzilla, where it's a foreign property, so not everything is really well cataloged in English.
Right.
A lot of stuff is, but because of that, that also allows for a lot of misinformation and a lot of myths and rumors to just kind of come out and kind of live. Right. And so it is something when you do have one of these people right in front of you, and you can say, look, Steve Wang, I mean, not a Japanese interview, but when he was on our podcast, there were a lot of things where we were like, well, I heard this, and he's like, what? No, that's not true.
Like the weird thing about RoboCop, and it's just
there was that. There was like his IMDb trivia says something about an Ultraman that he pitched that he couldn't get made because it was too dark, and he was like, that's complete fiction. Yeah. So when you have a chance to actually ask someone like, hey, is there truth to this? And finally put like a nail in the coffin of something like that.
Yeah, because rumors, hearsay, whatever, they float around forever, and enough people read it, like you think it's true, but it's like, for somebody to come out and like just one time, speak the truth and clarify things, it's just like that puts it on the record forever,
Yeah, and so, I mean, I don't know, I'm glad we have a chance to talk about this with your audience, because hopefully it can kind of get some people kind of checking it out. Within like the Godzilla fandom is so small that everything kind of at some point kind of turns into, I don't know, a contest or a one-upmanship or something. I know, people have talked to us about saying, why aren't you as inclusive as other conventions, and it's because they're used to conventions being about, well, this is about the fandom. So like, I want to see, how can I make my own cosplay or whatever. And it's like, or what about like all the toy collecting and stuff like that. And this really just, there's a place for that, and that stuff's all great. But this is more about like the actual,
Right.
the art itself, that is the reason why you would get into those things to begin with. So it's like our convention is like a niche within a niche within a niche.
Well,
So
yeah, I just
I think so I would kind of like to appeal to more just basic film lovers
right.
at this point.
Yeah, because I think really what you guys are doing, it's more, I mean, it is an online convention, but it's also really more an avenue to document history and then have that, be there, like a lot of the toy collecting and cosplaying and stuff like that's a lot of great fun that a lot of people have passion for, but it's like that's kind of more like the weekend thing, fun thing comes and goes. Like what you guys are doing is like, and putting the information out there, that's going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing I think, like Tokusatsu, which is the Japanese live action special effects, it's largely going away. The way that movies and
Yeah.
even like Ultraman is going the way of CG right now. Like Shin Ultraman is basically going to be mostly CG. Even the show, it's even like the newest Ultraman shows are largely visual effects. Like you still have some suitmation, you still have some miniatures, but like the explosions, even all digital effects. And like we're documenting history from people that like their craft is essentially dying,
Yeah.
and in 20 years they're not going to be around. So like I think that's the thing. Like we're talking to people who made this stuff, and the way that they made it isn't going to happen much longer, if at all. Like it's one of those things where I think we have a lot to learn and to document. And by the way, we watched the Guyver tonight, put out by Arrow. We also have Jasper Sharp, who is a
We
disc
probably should have mentioned that. We have Jasper Sharp of Arrow is one of our guests, and Arrow's been doing a lot of great kaiju stuff. They put out an amazing box set of all the Gamera films. They just did the Daimajin films, which are like a kind of a samurai period meets giant monster thing, and the yokai movies from Daiei they just did, which are cool, kind of like ghost monster movies. So yeah, we have Jasper Sharp from Arrow who will be kind of talking to us about their stuff.
That's awesome. So just real quick before anything else, just give people the basic information. Like this event is coming up in about 2+ weeks. Like how are they going to kind of come to it and participate while it's going on that weekend?
So it is November 5th through 7th. All of the panels will be streamed to YouTube. Keep an eye out for the website. We're hammering out the schedule right now. So the website, you will be able to see the schedule. Eventually, our YouTube will have each video, and it'll say set to broadcast at this date, this time. And in the meantime, I mean, the website's a great place, but also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And as soon as there's updates to be made, they'll be dropped there. There's still a couple guests that would be a pretty big deal if we can work something out with them, but can't make announcements just yet.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube and you look up Kaiju Masterclass, we have our own channel. All previous interviews are there. The new ones will be scheduled and put out with like dates and times so people can see that. KaijuMasterclass.com. That's going to have like your most up-to-date information. And again, that's going to be November 5th through 7th. And we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff this year, and I think there's probably a couple of surprises down the line that we'll announce in the next few weeks. But
already, I think it's a great time too, because gives you something to look forward to. Halloween ends. That's usually, you know, once Halloween comes and goes, that's usually a bummer for a lot of people. And this is something right around the corner after Halloween to really get into, and, you know, and just find out about and have fun with. So it's like, yeah, like I'm all about it. I'm looking forward to it. And the thing that's great is obviously there's a lot of content coming out, you know, November 5th through 7th. But the great thing is like, you know, obviously, you know, you don't have time to digest it all. It's just going to be there, and then you can
if
go
you miss
back at your
something,
leisure.
if you miss something, it's right there, you know. And that's the cool thing about it, you know. I mean, if someone wants to, if someone's doing research for a project or something, I mean, and you know, we'll have interviews with people that people can check out, you know. So being able to get original interviews with these guys out there is really nifty.
And in our show, the movie Graveyard, we live on forever. Like I can honestly say, our first episode, you know, that came out whatever August 2015, still gets regular downloads on a weekly basis. So if you're listening to this 5 years from now, 6 years from now, like go there, and there will probably they might be on Kaiju Masterclass 9 by that time, and you know, definitely going to be a lot there for you to take in and enjoy. So yeah, so I just think it's awesome, and like I said before, I'm happy for you guys, and I'm proud of you guys, and I know, you know, this is something that takes months of preparation, and it's not just you two guys and just everybody that helped you get, you know, kind of this thing come together. It's like, I think that's, like I said, that's just the beauty of you know, the good side of when a fandom comes together and does positive things, because, you know, at the end of the day, nobody gets into these things, you know, with grumpy intentions. This is the stuff we love, you know. This is the stuff that, you know, brings us enjoyment.
Yeah, and stuff like this, it's a lot of emails and schedules, and you know, shout out to our translators, Mariko and Amanda. I mean, they're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, we're keeping them busy.
Absolutely, so I'm excited. You know, I don't know. It's just a big highlight. As far as podcasting highlights, what was more exciting to you guys, doing that awesome interview with Steve Wang a couple years ago, or talking about Gorgo with me, the goat?
You know, I love you, but I mean, the Steve Wang interview is an all-timer.
That's
we did good with Gorgo, though. We actually we'll be having a history of Gorgo panel for Kaiju Masterclass. Which it's going to be me, Matt, and the author John LeMay, who's written a whole. I mean, he pretty much writes all about movies and their production, and specializes in kind of unmade movies. So he'll be bringing a lot of information about Gorgo back when it was a Japanese co-production.
Wow.
And there's some concept art and stuff that he'll have to show, but. John's a great guy. I've known him a long time. I'm actually helping him edit a book right now, and he has a fanzine that's out every quarter that Trev actually does a column for, about where he'll review like a superhero movie script that never got made.
Yeah, I've actually seen that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. The new one just came out. Trev reviewed a Lobo script.
Oh wow! I'm sure there's many Lobo scripts floating around. Yeah, see the Kaiju Masterclass. Even me, I'm not even like a Kaiju super. You know, my experience is limited with the genre, but they even got something coming for one of my favorite films, Gorgo. So
yeah,
a little something for everybody for sure.
Yeah, and we're also, Kevin Derendorf will be with us on that panel too, and he's done like Kaiju for Hipsters, and shout out to him tonight because some of the notes that I provided were from him. He's like a anime guru. Knows everything about some of that stuff, and
he's officially an Arrow alumni also, because he wrote a part for their Daimajin booklet.
Yep.
Awesome. So everybody make sure November 5th through 7th. I mean, really, that's when it's happening, but really any time after that, you know, even now they can go back and see what happened, you know, play catch up. You know, you got, when this episode comes out, you'll still have about 2 good weeks, a little more than 2 good weeks to.
We need views, boost our algorithm, or whatever.
Give us some clicks.
Yeah, give them some clicks, give them some likes, give them some subscribe. I would just say subscribe to the channel, because it's like, you know, it's like obviously you don't want to promised things for years to come. But I mean,
you know what's depressing is like some like random unboxing video, like a Godzilla unboxing,
yeah.
has, like 3 million views, and it's like, oh, our interview with Shinji Higuchi has like 500 or something.
Yeah.
And like I want to reiterate something too. This is like we don't make money on this. It's a labor of love.
Yeah.
We lose money, we invest money. We have to be able to like put the content out there, and like this is something we just want people to watch, enjoy, and learn from. And that's really the whole goal. So like when people watch it and we want them to give us clicks, we just want them to be able to learn about the movies from the people that made them.
Yeah.
We do have a Redbubble store. If you go to Redbubble, there's shirts and mugs and
you guys have a cool logo too, so I would actually recommend that for people.
Yeah, shout out to Kyle Gilmore, who's our graphic design guy. Yeah, he kills it.
I think we sold like 10 shirts, and 8 of the 10 were like bought by us.
Yeah, we get like $2 for each one.
So you get a tiny refund back.
No, but yes, go to the Redbubble store. Give us some pennies.
Yeah,
and it is much appreciated.
Any piece of support helps. So it's like for sure. So I always say like go rate, review the movie Graveyard. Also check out Kaiju Transmissions just for easy, quick access. If you listen to this because you are a fan of the Guyver, if you want to hear the Steve Wang episode, I believe that was from November 2019, right, guys?
Let me check real quick.
Yeah, because I was listening
to time in the era of COVID, I don't understand it all.
Yeah,
so I have to
forward.
That was November 14th, 2019. Oh my God, that feels so much longer.
And the episode isn't just like Steve Wang interview. It has a title. Could you read the title real quick, Byrd?
What do we have? We have Monsters, Mayhem, and Myth Busting. Interview with monster maker Steve Wang.
Yeah. Because I was looking for it, and the title threw me off because I was looking through Podbean, and it's like the thing where they only show so much of the title, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, and you can also just Google Kaiju, Google Gaga, Lady Google. Yeah, you can just Google Kaiju Transmission Steve Wang, and it will come up that way too. But it's like, yeah. So like real quick, because I don't know if it's a sad time or not, but we did have the Godzilla versus Kong came out, and we're getting promised future things, but I mean, just right now, as just kaiju fans, what is the upcoming things that you guys are looking forward to? Movies, TV, just whatever.
That's a weird question, just because like it's oddly silent suddenly.
that's why I'm asking, because that's what it feels like.
I'm not entirely convinced that the MonsterVerse will continue.
Yeah. I don't think
one thing that is really great. The new Godzilla anime miniseries on Netflix, Godzilla Singular Point. I really dug that. It's like really hard sci-fi. A lot of crazy physics theories and stuff that will probably fly over some people's heads. But either way, it's really enjoyable. I really loved that. And then there's I don't know. There's like some indie projects. Like there's one that made by an American called EK Boys, which is on the festival circuit right now. As far as like the big things go, like I guess Hideki Anno has Shin Ultraman, which he wrote, and Shin Kamen Rider, which is filming now. But being that I wasn't the biggest fan of Shin Godzilla, and I kind of find the whole here's another property with like do Shin. Shin, every studio is approaching this guy like do a Shin R thing, and so I don't know. That's
explain that to me real quick, because I'll give you what is the Shin part? I just thought Shin Godzilla was just part of the title of that one particular movie. Well,
Shin means it's a word of a ton of different meanings. So some of them are true, God, new. Yeah, so usually new is kind of what it's synonymous with, but Shin Godzilla was like this outlier because in Japan it was like the only Godzilla thing in a very long time to like light up the box office, and a lot of that has to do with the creator of that movie, Hideki Anno, is like He made Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is like one of the biggest, and it's like the Star Wars of anime. It's so huge. So, that guy prints box office money these days. So that was huge. And now it's like every other studio that has like a big property is like, hey, do you want to do like, so he's doing Shin Ultraman for Tsuburaya. Well, he wrote it. Shinji Higuchi directed it. Now he's filming Shin Kamen Rider, which he wrote and directed. So it just seems like kind of a cash grabby, like,
it's very bizarre. I never knew that's where the Shin.
We want you. Yeah, can you recreate the box office gold of Shin Godzilla for us? Is like what every studio is saying.
It's almost like John Carpenter's Godzilla followed by John Carpenter's Star Wars. It's very bizarre.
Exactly. Yeah, so
it's weird that like all the monster stuff. What you basically have, you have Ultraman, which right now is putting out a TV show about every year, and then you have like a lot of just indie stuff. Like the Super Legend God Hisoka, which is being done by Minoru Kawasaki, who did like Monster Seafood Wars and a bunch of other little parodies.
There's a Brush of the God, which is Keizo Murase. He's like one of the original Godzilla, like 60s monster suit makers. He's got like an indie project.
Wow.
None of the big franchises are doing too much right now. Although I think with Godzilla, I think what we are going to get is this 2021, almost 2022, 2024 is going to be the 70th anniversary. So I think they might sit on Godzilla, or at least just do like little things with him up until I guarantee you we'll be getting a 70th anniversary thing.
Yeah.
So whatever they do, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing whatever they have up their sleeve. Their way of managing Godzilla these days is kind of like finding a guy and being like, do what you want with it. And sometimes that works really well, sometimes it doesn't, but it's an interesting approach.
Yeah, like you're getting like Yoshikazu Ishii he's gonna be putting out the biggest battle in Tokyo, I think, like next year, which is gonna again be like a small indie film, but we'll have traditional suitmation. He did Attack of the Giant Teacher, which is like another little low budget indie film that played at like G-Fest, and they actually got a Blu-ray release in the US. So like, you're seeing a lot of that kind of stuff. Big studio stuff. Like I would be surprised if Toho doesn't do something for the 770.
Yeah.
But I think the next biggest thing is going to be Shin Ultraman.
Yeah, and Netflix has a Kong animated series that's supposed to be within the MonsterVerse by the team that did their Castlevania series.
Right.
I know that's supposed to be coming up.
Is that more for the younger kids though, like that one King Kong thing that they did?
Nah, I think this will probably be more towards teens and young adults,
like general movie audience type.
Yeah. And then there's not too much else going on right now. We had a kind of big boom from like
huge
from like Pacific Rim through Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
And the Pacific Rim anime on Netflix that's supposed to be getting a season 2 next year or whatever. But yeah, nothing. There's not really anything huge right now.
I think like what you're also seeing though is a ton of Godzilla related merchandise, like officially released stuff.
Oh yeah. It's definitely it's definitely merchandising is where it is. Like it's one of those like let's resurrect this property for a little bit as an excuse to get merch revenue.
You're right.
So yeah, I mean, it seems like every day there's a video game or a board game or a toy line or a T-shirts. I mean, the merch doesn't end at this point. So I mean, Godzilla's out there as much as ever, maybe even more than ever.
I would say more. Yeah.
And yeah, you can buy a Godzilla anything.
Like this reminds me of like basically late 90s, after 98 film, all the merch that came out officially, we're getting that again, but it's getting put out by multiple companies. Like you got T-shirts, you got soundtracks, you got Mondo puts out like a new Godzilla toy, which feels like every couple of weeks. I mean, it's
comic books. It's insane.
It's a much larger worldwide scale than just in the days of when we're like, oh, look at this crappy Trend Masters thing.
Yeah.
Dude, I love those toys.
Back then, that's
Yeah.
like literally all we had. Now it's
Yeah.
like a big buffet. But yeah, suspiciously missing as usual is Gamera.
Except Gamera did get the best kaiju related box set I think that will ever exist.
Oh,
The
that arrow,
set
yeah,
is
that arrow
incredible.
set is amazing.
Yeah, that big. I've only seen pictures of it online, but that big long Trend Masters got 98 Godzilla toy was actually very good looking.
It's a nice toy and it sells for several $100s now.
Yeah, I
if
know.
you wanna, it's ridiculous.
I know. I wish I would have picked one up back in the day for $40 or how much it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The home video stuff is really exciting though. Like Arrow's putting out these box sets. Criterion did their Godzilla set. Mill Creek has been putting out all the entire Ultraman franchise on
Yeah.
Blu-ray. Scream Factory just put out the 76 Kong.
Yep.
I have relatively reliable word that King Kong Lives may be coming at some point.
Bring it.
I'm excited for that more than the 76 Kong.
So yeah, like honestly, the Blu-rays are what's like really exciting for me. It's like, we're in a renaissance. Like a lot of the indie stuff that is coming out in Japan is like getting picked up by like smaller labels here. So yeah, that's kind of like we're in like a home video renaissance for kaiju stuff.
Oh, big time.
That's what's exciting for me.
Yeah, I think the people that say physical media is dead and all that kind of thing, they don't understand. Like they just see the shrinking revenue in terms of like the mainstream, but I don't think they understand is that you can sell a Godzilla Blu-ray just as much as you can sell a Godzilla T-shirt. So why not do it? You know what I mean? It's like
yeah. So that's what's been most exciting for me, and that's not even Godzilla stuff, but it's just like just all these so many box set. Like it's like I feel like every month I'm pre-ordering a new box set for like that's like $80 to $100 or something.
Yeah,
we're being irresponsible adults with our money right now, is what Bird's saying.
I'm in the same boat with stuff, guys, because I feel like stuff that I've been like waiting 20 years for, it's all just coming out within a 6-month time span. I'm like, what do I do? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
And 5 years ago, when like the everything was just dry, nothing was coming out other than just studio releases or whatever. It's just like, it's like, oh no, that will never come out. It would never make money. It would never. And it's like now, it's like everything you ever wanted. Like I've had more of my holy grail movies come out on Blu-ray in the last year than literally the last previous like 8-10 years combined. It's just crazy.
Well, what you're also seeing though is like, okay, so SRS, SRS is a little small company that releases these tiny little indie production, or like even like old school like VHS homemade slasher kind of movies, but they picked up some like Godzilla kaiju-esque titles like Raiga. Well, now that stuff's actually getting released at Walmart. Like you can walk into Walmart and buy this little indie production and anybody can do it, which is just insane to me. You would never thought that 10, even 5 years ago, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that up until, within the last 3 years, Americans had no idea they existed, but now you can stroll into Walmart and buy it.
The only other place you could have seen that in the U.S. would have been at G-Fest when it got when one of those got streamed during one of the movie nights. Like this, now you're getting it like at Walmart if you want to go pick it up, and it's like $13.
Yeah, and people act like you should never put anything on a physical store shelf unless you know for sure that there's a bunch of people that want to go buy it. I think just literally things being on store shelves is how people discover things and things grow that way, just physically seeing them.
I see on like a lot of the kaiju groups, like people like will be at a Walmart or something and they'll take a picture of like one of those indie movies that they like, one of those indie kaiju movies, and they'll be like, what is this? Has anyone seen this? And
exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it's there is a place for it, and it is going to be more collector, focused, I think, in the next few years, but whatever, I'll buy it still. There's a lot of people like me that will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I it's weird because it's like we're in such a strange time with the world and everything that's going on. but it's like, as far as like stuff like this, like it's just as good a time as ever to be, especially just, I mean, really even just a movie fan in general. I think, like, 5 years ago we weren't getting any of this stuff. All we had to, like, was just major studio whatever, and it felt suffocating. And now it's like the floodgates are open. I think it's great. I think if anything, there will probably be a lot of new fans, and people, like, because like it's hard to discover stuff unless it's like legally available, readily available. You know what I mean? And I think it's going to be a good thing in the long run.
I do think this gives us the opportunity to, like, for new fans to get made. I mean,
yeah,
the amount of people that their first Godzilla film was a '98 film, you're having the opportunity to see that with all the new legendary stuff, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of all this.
I have, like, some of my friends who aren't even like Godzilla fans, like they have kids that like love Godzilla versus Kong, and they're always sending me pictures of like, yeah, we were at Target and he is making me buy this dumb Godzilla thing, and it's like I'm hanging out with you again. Like I hear that all the time now from people. Like, one of my friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, I went to his house the other day, and sure enough, his like 3-year-old son has a giant King Kong and that he's knocking blocks down with and stuff. So I mean, yeah, these characters aren't going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's about a good place to leave it right here. I just want to thank you guys, and obviously tell everybody to go check out Kaiju Masterclass. Really, at any point in the future, any point that you hear our voices, it's always good just reconnecting with you guys, having fun with you guys, and I appreciate that you guys have really, I mean, like, we can do anything, any movie, whatever. But like, I appreciate that you guys do come over to our little corner of the podcasting world and help share the kaiju love. Because without you guys, I don't think I ever would have been able to do episodes about Gorgo or King Kong's live. So I mean, I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate you guys a lot.
Anytime, and same thing. Anytime I'm on here, we've done a lot of non-kaiju stuff with me on here, like Pieces. Pieces.
I think Pieces is one of our craziest episodes ever.
That's a crazy movie, though.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like trying to make sense of something that's made by a crazy space alien. It feels like, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, definitely check out Kaiju Transmissions. I mean, really, like, like, you guys are that show has. I think you guys started right around the same time we started this show, and it's just
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
For a little while, I was doing this and If It Bleeds.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's awesome, Matt. Byrd, thank you. Of course, Kaiju Masterclass, Kaiju Transmissions. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, listeners, for hanging in there. And if you're a Kaiju fan or just a Guyver fan or whatever, and you found this episode on the internet, please check out these guys' other stuff. Peruse our catalog. We got a great kind of cross blending of fandoms here. Whenever you guys come on, I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys, and all you listeners. We'll see you right back here again soon in the movie graveyard.